I some ideas I just wanted to get off my mind. Um, it's been about 4 years now since I moved to Florida, and literally changed the way I live my life. And I think about all the times when I had these goals and dreams in my mind of how I was going to make the move, because I really wanted to get back to a place where I can live a life similar to how I grew up in the Caribbean. And it took me a while, since graduating college, and I just knew after graduating college and entering into the engineering industry, because for those of you who may not know me, my background is engineering, but today I'm an investment advisor. I made that transition um, a while back, but it has always been on my mind to get back to warmer climate, you know, because I grew up in a small island called island nation called Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. Definitely, you should look it up and visit if you ever have the opportunity to. It's a beautiful island, beautiful nation. Saint Vincent is the largest island, and to the south you have the Grenadine Islands. Bequia, Mustique, Canawan, Yunan Island, Mairo. Um, so many beautiful Tobago Keys. I visited actually Union Island and Tobago Keys, my last visit home, and it was beautiful. So, and growing up in that setting has always, stayed with me. And I've always wanted to come back to a more tropical climate. And I wanted my son to be able to grow up outside and be able to play and enjoy, just being outside more instead of just being locked up 8, 9 months of the year in Maryland. So it was so important for me to make that move back. But as I look back on what it took, or more importantly, what prevented me from making the move sooner, what prevented me from making the transition to becoming a full time entrepreneur sooner, it comes down to one word: fear. It really comes down to that, because just imagine going to school, getting an education, getting 2 engineering degrees, and the only thing that I knew about money while I was going to school, the only thing I knew about earning money was getting a job. That's the only option that I knew existed. So of course, so your automatic goal becomes to go to school, do very well. Fortunately, I had a tennis scholarship, worked really hard to do that. So I earned a tennis scholarship, came to Morgan State on a tennis scholarship in Baltimore. That's why I completed my undergrad. Then I went to Johns Hopkins after that to do my master's in environmental engineering. Loved it, loved my connections at both schools. But the only option that I knew of at that time was getting a job. I didn't know that there were other ways to make money. I really didn't have a concept or understanding of how to become self-employed, how to actually become a business owner and then start developing systems and owning systems that you can then sell or you can then use to acquire other businesses, right? I had no concept, no idea of that. And that's one of the things I think is missing in our educational system. We need to start teaching more about how that actually works. I do believe if I had been exposed to that information from an earlier age, if I had known that there were other options, I would have made drastically different decisions in my career. And I think most of the biggest, I mean, besides fear, and this is the reason why it's so fearful for most people to make that transition, because there's really no education. There's really no real world there's no curriculum that really teaches you how to move being from being an employee to really running a business full time. I think we really need to have more of an education process that really exposes people to understanding what we need to understand about the economy, honestly, and how you make money. Because it's so important for you to understand what true and real security is. Because the real security, the only security that you can actually have is the security that you guarantee. And more and more as I run a business, I start realizing that more and more and more, there's only one person who could really create that security. And it really comes down to you and what you're going to do on a daily basis. Of course, there's things you need to know about laws and contracts and all these different things. Yes, of course. And there are guarantees that you can, give to yourself. But most employees are just not in a situation to even have that level of control. They don't. So, and there's nothing wrong with having a job if you need to take care of yourself and do those and take care of your family. That, of course, you need to do that. Do it. I did it for many years. So, but as I look back, and even as I look back on how I grew up in the Caribbean in St. Vincent, it was really all about trying to get a job. Trying to get a job. And most of us are never trained. We don't have the confidence instilled in us to go and build something of our own because we have no clue how to even do it. Because if you grew up in a household with your mom and dad, they have a job, that's what they know. That's how they know how to make money, you know. But as an entrepreneur now, I want my son and my daughter to be able to do whatever they want to do. I want them to be able to do whatever they want to do. If that entails having a job or working for something, that's fine. But I don't want it to be something that they must do. I don't want working for somebody else to be something that they must do in order to survive. I want that to be an option for them. And it's all about creating options. At the end of the day, it's really just about creating options for yourself and your family. And that's why overcoming that fear is so critical, so important. Because once you get through the fearfulness and you get to the other side and you start doing this, running your business and taking care of yourself and doing the things you're supposed to, yes, there's going to be turbulence. There's always going to be this turbulence. There's always going to be things, that you didn't expect. Things are going to pop up, right? But if you have a strategy and a plan that you can stick to and you can be consistent with, it makes it so much easier for you to put your head down and go to work and just stay focused on what you need to do because eventually things are going to work themselves out, right? So going back to the fair, I think there's so many people out there right now, even watching this video, that have an idea, want to explore something for themselves, but they just don't know how because they have no clue on what it means to make that transition, And the way I made that transition was really just forcing myself, quite honestly, to replace a certain portion of my income. And I would encourage anybody to try this. Just try it because you got to start building the confidence in yourself first. You don't want to just quit your job and just go do something else without having the confidence that you know how to make money. You have to know how to make money. You have to know how your systems work, and every result. And one of the biggest things I'll share with anyone is in the beginning, it's all about client acquisition. It's all about you knowing how to acquire a client and coming up with a system that perpetuates that, right? Coming up with a system that generates you leads and brings people to you or set appointments for you that you can automatically speak to and share with them what you do. If you have unlimited amount of leads, it's going to be difficult for you not to make money. You're going to be tripping over money. So, but now you have to start thinking systematically about how to create leads, and that's where the work comes in. That's a lot of work. That's part of my day every day. Well, I don't know what's the time now. It's just after 8 o'clock, but I've been out here since after 6 o'clock. Because I wanted to get a workout in, and the first thing that I'm going to do in the morning is generate leads. I'm going to do some type of activity that is going to generate leads for me, so I can get my face in front of another face, right? And there's several ways to do that. Of course, there's one-to-one. You can do it one-to-one. You can do it one-to-many. This is a one-to-many platform, right? So of course, you want to have several ways to generate leads, but the reality is you have to do it consistently so that you can build momentum. And you have to know that. So you can, once you know what is required, you know the activity from yourself that is required to generate those leads, then it just becomes systemic. It becomes automatic. You know what to do to set those systems in place, so you can perpetuate that, to make sure that there's an unlimited source of people just coming to talk to you day in and day out. And if you once you figure that out, and you figure out, it's really about making yourself the person that is capable of doing the work. Because once you figure out what to do, there's no need for you to get angry or frustrated anymore. At this point, I don't get angry or frustrated anymore. I just look at my own activity and look at my own schedule and see how much effort I've been putting in the inputs, right? Because there's input that creates output. And once you know what the inputs are into the system, you know what to do. There's no need for you to get mad or frustrated. You can't be mad at the work that you decided not to do. You can't be mad at the result if you know exactly what the input is that is required to get that result. And if you're not happy with the result, stop trying to focus on the result. Focus on the input. And the input is where you come in, where your effort, your intelligence, your rate of learning, because there's a lot of learning that you need to do. So individuals out there, especially young upcoming entrepreneurs, you need to get that, because if you don't get that, it doesn't matter how much money people try, even if you get funding, and even if somebody gives you $100,000, $500,000 to invest in your business, if you don't have the right systems in place, if you don't know what the right inputs are to generate the right outputs, you're going to waste that money. That money is just going to be wasted, So it's critical for you to figure that out. And if you could figure that stuff out before making that full-time transition to running a business full-time, it's even better, because you can get practice. You can get practice trying to figure out, to work out the kinks, in the process, so that you know what's really going to work. So by the time you make that full-time transition, you have already worked out the kinks. You already know what level of effort is required, what level of qualifications in terms of the things you need to know, what skill sets are required. You know everything that's required. Okay, you need to learn this. You need to do that. I need to get this person involved. I need to get an assistant to help me with this. And then you build the system out mentally. Create that image, draw it out, right? I've drawn my system out so many times, just to keep a clear mental picture in my mind of what the inputs are, what's the level of effort from me that's required, so that I'm not confused. So if I know I need to create a certain amount of income, I know exactly how much effort I need to put in. I know the skills that need to be used. I know the tools that I need to use, all that stuff. You got to figure that out. But at the end of it, before making that transition, I would highly recommend that you place yourself in a position where you have to make the money. You have to make the money. So when you put yourself in a position where you have to make the money, there's no getting around it. So what I did, I literally I used to take 25% of my 9-to-5 income, set it aside in the money market, and where I just couldn't see it. And I forced myself to replace that 25% with income from my business, right? So I had to do that. So now, and that's money that I needed to pay bills or to do this or to do. You gotta force yourself to do it, right? Because when you run a business full time, that's what you're gonna be doing. You have to do it. So you gotta know, put your butt in that position where you can't get away from it. But the beautiful thing about running that system is that as you start making progress and you start figuring things out, you start figuring out how the systems work, how to make money, what levers to pull, what cash registers to ring. You start figuring out little ways, all these little things that you needed to know to generate income for your business, right? So once you start figuring out all these different things, you start learning how to make money. And you start learning to do it while putting yourself under a limited amount of pressure. Not maximum pressure. You regulate a measured amount of pressure in the beginning, and then you increase the pressure as you start making more and more money from your business, right? Because once you start making 25% and then you start putting away 50% of your income into a money market and just setting that aside, and you force yourself to make 50% of your 95 income from your business. Now, once you start doing that, and of course, it takes some mental toughness. You're not gonna hit it every month. You might fall behind on some things here or there, but you gotta keep going. It's not gonna be a smooth ride. It's gonna be like this, you know. It's not gonna be a smooth, linear ride. It's never like that. It's never like that. No business is like that, right? So, but you have to put yourself through the process so that you can feel the emotions of going through that, feel the pressure of having to make the money, and having to take care of responsibilities, take care of paperwork, take care of audits. You got to put yourself in the environment where you do it. But the most important thing you need to learn how to do is how to acquire clients and become profitable. You need to know that. You need to know exactly, and to become profitable, you need to know what your break even is, right? You need to know what your overhead is. What is and that's why it's so important as an entrepreneur to keep your overhead low, especially in the beginning. Keep your overhead to a minimum and stay small until you figure out all the things you need to do to make money consistently and ring that cash register consistently and make that transition. So, but getting back to the system of the 25%, 50%, putting yourself on, giving yourself practice as an entrepreneur before you go full time. By doing that, all along you're saving money, because remember, you're putting away 25% of your income, your 9 to 5 income every month. And then and you're replacing that with your full-time income from your business, with your income from your business. So you're spending the income from your business, but you're saving money. Because you're replacing that 25% with income from your business. So now as you go along, you're saving money. And you save 25, 35%, then you save 40%, 50%. So all this time you're saving a portion of your 9 to 5 income. So you're having money set aside, right? And you're forcing yourself to live off of a portion of your 9 to 5 and a portion of your business income. But by doing it this way, you're saving money and you're putting yourself in a position where you're getting practice, learning how to actually run your business full time. So I think that is what I think most people don't have a process like this. Most people think that just they have to give up their job and without any strategy, no plan, nothing. I think if you were to follow a plan like this, a strategy like this, and I call it a strategy because it gives you a clear advantage. It gives you an advantage of saving money plus getting real experience of having to deal with the pressure of being an entrepreneur with some sort of a safety net, right? So there's a huge advantage here to you because you're still using a certain portion of your 9 to 5 income, right? But forcing yourself and giving yourself that real world practice. And that is so important for you to do. And when you get to the point of being able to make 90%, to replace 90% or so of your 9 to 5 income with income from your business, then you can really, some people it might be 90%, some it might be 50%. It just depends on you. Whatever you think is good. It depends how much money you have saved, right? So if you think you have enough money saved, and you have your debt is low, you paid down your debt or paid off your debt completely, okay? And you get yourself into a position where you're able to make that move. Okay. But if you're married, just make sure you and your spouse are on the same page and you have that conversation about what you're going to do, because you're going to need support throughout the process. You don't want to be asking for permission. You want to ask for support. not permission, right? But if both of you are on the same page, you don't have to ask for permission. Okay, so you just go ahead and do what you need to do. But that's the biggest thing I would say I believe that prevented me from making the move sooner, and that prevents so many other people from making that move sooner. I really believe it comes down to fear and lack of knowledge, and lack of a real strategy as to how to make that transition, you know. But as it comes, because as it comes down to it, every single day. But the biggest thing I would say you need to create a system for is lead generation. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. I don't care what business you're in. When you're launching anything, you need to figure out how to acquire clients, and how to do it consistently, how to get people interested in speaking to you or engaging with your product or service consistently. Because the more leads you generate, the more, even if you're terrible at sales, you will still be able to make money. Because I know there are some people who are so terrible at sales, but if you have a bunch of leads, you still make money. It's just what it is. So that's what I wanted to touch on today. I hope, I don't know who needed to hear this, but I really hope that, especially individuals back home who are aspiring entrepreneurs, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and throughout the Caribbean, but especially in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I want the young entrepreneurs there to be able to have that insight as to what you need to do, and some real practical steps that you can take, to make that transition from working a job to running your business. So you can start creating some freedom for yourself and having some control over your schedule, because there are tons of people who make a lot of money, but they have no control over their schedule. They can't even wake up and decide what they're going to do in the morning. If that's not the life you want, you need to start figuring out a way to have control of your own schedule. And the only way you're going to do that is being able to work for yourself or own your own business. But in the beginning of running your own business, by the way, you're not going to have a whole lot of control over your schedule. You're going to be totally out of balance. You're going to be just working most of the time. That's just the reality. But most people are going to sell you this dream that, yes, but that's the end product. Once you get to a point where you have a certain level of financial security and you have ownership of your business and systems and everything, yeah, of course, everything is automatic and you have cash flow coming in once you have good systems in place, okay? And that's why it's so important. I'll do another video talking about systems, but systems is so important. To have systems, to design proper systems and have systems working for you. That's the whole point, is to be able to figure out and build and create and own a system that does work for you so you don't have to do the work. And actually creating a system that works better than you, right? And can work. Because for example, when I do this video and I post it to YouTube, post it to Facebook, this video is working while I'm sleeping. So it's part of a system that perpetuates my message in the marketplace. So you have to think about designing systems. This is just one part of it, but that's the mentality that you need to start developing right now. And there are different skills that you need to start learning. And if I were you, I don't care who you are, in what school, what are you studying, what you're doing in college, you should start to learn how to use AI, how to use social media, how to start developing a brand, a personal brand, because that's going to become more and more important as time goes on, and that's a skill, and these are skills that I had to learn, I kind of feel like I was late to the game. I didn't really jump on YouTube as soon as I think I should have, right? I don't think that I started learning how to do videos as early as I should have. I should have been using a one-to-many approach way sooner, but I didn't, right? But it is what it is. You live and you learn. So, but the entrepreneurial game is really about overcoming that initial fear, overcoming that initial lack of knowledge, because most of us are not educated on how to start a business for ourselves, and then how to design products, how to package information, because that's really what it is, right? It's about packaging first. Because if you can't go on social media or promote your product unless you packaged it. And when I say package, I'm not talking about actual physical packaging. Packaging as in putting together, composing something, composing a message. It could be a training class, it could be anything. You need to know how to compose it, how to put it together, how to put together that presentation, that webinar, that whatever it is that speaks about your product or service, that how to put it together, package it first. That's where most of the time is spent, packaging it, putting it together, making sure that you're very clear on what you're trying to say. You're making sure that you're very clear on the benefits of the product that your clients would experience once they get involved. Okay? So once you've packaged that, you know what that is, then you can now promote it. You can now promote that thing because you know what it is. It's kind of like putting a show together. You need to know all the artists that are going to be performing. You need to know what the agenda is going to be. How is it going to be introduced? How are we going to start the show? How is it going to open? Then what are we going to transition to? Then what comes next and what comes next? You understand? So you hope you have that whole package. When you know who's going to be on the show, you know how all your transitions are going to happen, you know, all the surprise acts, whatever it is. Package that whole deal. And then now you can promote it. You can get on social media, you can get on the radio, you can get on wherever, and you can promote that thing. And of course, then once the show comes off, you start making money, you start making the profit. That's how it goes. So, but if you don't know that, you just jump onto social media and you just start talking about stuff with no rhyme or reason to what you're doing. You know, but every time you have a message, you gotta start thinking about what are you attracting people to. And when I came to Florida, even I had to now revamp the way I did my business because I'm in a different environment. People do things differently in this environment, in this economy, in this, you know, in this area. So we had to come up with different packaging, right? So I came up with a different packaging. Then I got my message together. Then I started putting those messages out, right? So that's really how it goes. You know, it goes, you know, packaging, promoting, then you get to the profit. But it really starts with getting over the initial fear of, and that fear, I promise you, I know it comes from a lack of knowing, lack of knowledge. That's where fear comes from, lack of knowing. That's where the anxiety comes from, lack of knowledge. And once you get over that hump and you know exactly where to focus your energy, then you can start developing momentum and you can start really seeing real progress. All right. So I hope this helps somebody, especially my people back in St. Vincent, but of course my people here, my friends, family here in the States, of course. But if you have friends and relatives here in Florida, in New York, because I do business throughout pretty much all states on the East Coast, from New York all the way down to Florida, and also in California. If you know other Vincentians or other people from the Caribbean, Jamaica, and if you don't know, I'm half Jamaican, by the way. So I'm half Jamaican, half Vincentian. My father is actually Jamaican. You know, he passed away a couple of years ago. You know, God bless his soul. But my mother is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that's where I grew up. And my mom still actually lives in New York. Hey, say hey, I love you, Mom, if you're watching this. But she lives in New York, in Brooklyn. She lived there for many years, and you know. But so if you have friends and relatives who are in New York and you know they want to reach out to me, have them click on the link in the description. I'm gonna leave a link in the description where you can connect with me and you know learn more. If you need a mentor if you need a mentor to actually help you through the process of a business that you've already started, or you need to have some type of discussion about a strategy as to how to build a solid financial house, what insurances are good for you, what type of life insurance should you have, how should you utilize your 401k at work, how should you set up an IRA investment, anything that you have questions about, feel free to reach out and we'll have that conversation and have a discovery call. So click on the link in the description. I'll leave that there if you want to reach out and connect and learn more about how to put yourself in a position of ownership and control so you can have a better relationship with your money. All right. So talk to you guys on the next video. If you have any comments, if there's anything you like to meet, anything that you would like for me to address on the next video, or any other topics that you would like me to talk about, please leave those in the comments as well. And I love the feedback. Feedback is gold to me because it really helps me. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe. We're trying to hit a significant milestone, and take, so we can take our content on this channel to the next level. So please subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and share this content with somebody who can benefit today. Take care.